Hello BookTube, my name is Elizabeth. Welcome or welcome back to my channel, Book as in Books. And welcome or welcome back to the latest installment in my Ultimate Jane Austen Ranking series. In this video, I am going to rank the family dynamics. What is that? Good question. At first, I thought I would rank sibling relationships in Jane Austen's novels because all of Jane Austen's heroines have at least one sibling. Generally, they have many more than that. So at first, I thought I would rank that, but then I thought that was just too complicated or perhaps a bit unfair because not in every book it plays the same. It has the same importance in every book because in some it's very, very important, like in Sense and Sensibility, and in one like Northanger Abbey, it barely plays a role. So I thought it was a bit unfair to rank the books according to that. So instead I decided to take into account all family relationships. Mainly how interesting it is to spend time in that family, because that is a bit what happens in Jane Austen's novel. We meet a heroine and we spend a lot of time with her, and that means with her family. So how interesting is it to live in that house? Not saying whether how lovely it is, because in some places it's not very lovely and it's not a place that is full of love, but it's still very interesting. So that's a bit what I'm ranking. So in this case, in the case of this criteria, I have to say that I don't feel as strongly as I feel for some other categories. For example, for the love interests, some I hate and some I really like. And in this case, I think all the families have something interesting to provide. I think it's just another fun way to consider Jane Austen's novels. So that's the reason why I decided to rank it according to that. And also because family is very important in Jane Austen's novels, and it's important in life in general. So let's rank the novels according to family dynamics. So the one that I put at the bottom is Northanger Abbey. The reason is that we don't see a lot of the heroine's family. In fact, we see barely anything of it. We see a bit at the beginning and a bit at the end, and in the middle, they don't really count. Of course, Catherine Brothers comes to visit her in Bath, and that is very touching, very lovely. But then again, we are not really immersed in the family of Catherine Morland. The other family that we meet is the family of Henry Tilney. So we meet his sister and his father, and we spend quite a bit of time, about half the book, in Northanger Abbey, in that family, in the Tilney family. However, it's not necessarily the most interesting family because the dynamics are quite clear. The father is tyrannical and the children have to follow, particularly the daughter. So it's not the most interesting, it's not the most subtle, and it's my least favorite family dynamics, I guess. Number 6. At number 5, I would put Persuasion. In this book, we follow Anne Elliot, and she has 2 sisters. The eldest is not married, and she's still living with their father, who is widowed. And as with Anne, so the 2 eldest sisters are still at Kellynch Hall and living with their father. And the youngest is married. It's Mary, who is now Mary Musgrove. And at the beginning of the book, we spend quite a bit of time in the Musgrove family. So with Anne is going to her sister's place at Uppercross, and there the man with whom she's married, Charles Musgrove, is living just neighboring on the same estate as his parents, basically. And they keep visiting one another every day, all the time. So we spend a lot of time with the Musgroves. And the Musgroves are a very balanced family, which makes them not very interesting. I think for that, Leo Tolstoy was right in saying that happy families are not particularly interesting. Well, I don't think that's what he said. He said happy families are all happy in the same way, but unhappy families are unhappy in a very distinctive way. But basically, a happy family is not that interesting. So the other family that is not happy is the Elliot family. But then again, the dynamics are not that fascinating. Once we learn that Anne doesn't count, there's nothing else to learn about that family. So it's mildly interesting. Number 5. At number 4, the Woodhouse family of Emma. Emma has an older sister. She is married to Mr. Knightley's brother, and they are living in town in London, I think. And they are not very much at Highbury. They don't spend a lot of time there. But the very strong bond between Emma and her father is just a joy to see. It is for me the one outstanding quality of Emma. Is the one thing that I like about Emma. It's her devotion to her father. And I think it's very beautiful to see, even though the father is completely ridiculous. He's a hypochondriac. He thinks going to be ill, and everybody's going to be ill all the time, and he panics at anything. He needs a doctor every day just to make sure that he's not dying, basically, or that he's not already dead or something. The family dynamic is very interesting, of Emma and her father. And there's also the contrast of Emma and her father and Frank Churchill and his father, because Frank Churchill not only does not visit his father, he has changed his name so that he can inherit. So I think it's a nice contrast between these two families, and it's kind of interesting to be in there. So number 4. At number 3, Sense and Sensibility. We spend a lot of time with the Dashwood family. Now, the Dashwood family is kind of separated. We have the sister, because the elder Mr. Dashwood, who dies at the very beginning of the book, married twice. So from his first marriage, he had a son who has now inherited the entire estate, and from a second marriage, he has 3 daughters. And now we follow 2 of these 3 daughters, Eleanor and Marianne, and this entirety of these 3 daughters and the widow, they have to find another place where to live. So we spend a lot of time in that little cottage in, I forgot the name of where they live. Yeah, that one I read a year ago. It's a bit less fresh in my memory, but basically we spend a lot of time with that little family unit of 3 daughters and 1 mother, and that is a very warm family. But we know that a part of that family is missing, and that's the brother. Even though they're just half siblings, he still counts. He's still part of the family, but he's the one who decides to cast away his younger sisters. And the dynamics between Fanny Dashwood, in fact, the wife of the brother, and the younger sisters, I think is quite interesting and quite fascinating to follow. And of course, in the background somewhere out there, though it's not always at the forefront, there's also the dynamics of the Ferris family, because Fanny Dashwood was born Ferris. She's the daughter of a very formidable woman, Mrs. Ferris, and she has 2 sons, Edward Ferris, who is the love interest of Eleanor, and Robert Ferris. And the way this mother favors one son over the other, I think, is quite spectacular. It's quite interesting. So I think for family dynamics, Sense and Sensibility provides quite a few things to explore. So I pushed it number 3. At number 2, I would put Pride and Prejudice. Now, we spend a lot of time, basically all the time, with the Bennet family. Obviously, you probably know that the Bennet families, there's Mr. Bennet and Mrs. Bennet and 5 daughters looking for husbands, because the estate is entailed and will, upon Mr. Bennet's death, it will go to Mr. Collins. So in this book, we see a happy family somewhat, because of course the marriage between Mr. Bennet and Mrs. Bennet is not as happy as it could be, as it should be, as we want it to be, I guess. It's not a happy marriage. They are not very well suited, and after 20-something years of marriage, the cracks are showing. They are not united, and they bicker, and even though it's done in a very subtle way, maybe Mrs. Bennet does not even realize that her husband does not quite like her anymore, but we can see the cracks in the marriage. But we can see that at the beginning, when everything is going fine, it's not that important. But then at the end, when things are not going as well, towards the end, not at the end, towards the end, when Lydia does something very stupid, we realize that the cracks in the marriage had important consequences. So we see sibling relationships, the lovely relation between Jane and Elizabeth. We see Mary Bennet desperately trying to get some attention by being the accomplished one. We see Lydia, the 5th daughter, some sort of disappointment because she's not a boy, deciding to behave like a spoiled child, even though I don't think she was spoiled more than the others, but for some reason she decides that that's the way she's going to get attention. So the rivalries in a way between the sisters is kind of interesting to see. The rivalries between some sisters, I think Mary considers herself the rival of all of her sisters because she's trying to get attention and she wants to be the best. And she can't. So the Bennet family in and of itself is very interesting. And plus we see other kinds of families. We see the Lucas family, which seems a bit united. We see Mr. Darcy and his little sister, and that is just lovely to see. The older brother becoming a bit a father to the younger sister. That is just lovely. And of course we see cousinly relations with Mr. Collins, and we see and the relation between aunts and nephews, an aunt and nephews, Lady Catherine de Bourgh and her two nephews, Mr. Darcy and Colonel Fitzwilliam. So a lot of family dynamics to explore in Pride and Prejudice, and just a lot of fun to spend time with that family. And at number one, I'm kind of surprised myself that I put it at number one. It's Mansfield Park. I think that is the novel where the notion of family is the most explored and where it's the most central to it. Because Fanny Price is in fact a cousin of Edmund Bertram and the two Bertram girls, Mariah and I forgot the name of the other. It's not Louisa. It's Henrietta. No, these are the Musgroves. Anyway, basically she's a cousin, a poor relation of the Bertrams, and she's invited to Mansfield Park so that she will not be a burden to her parents. So we see Fanny Price in this rich family, but a family that is not necessarily a happy family, because the eldest son is just wasting his life basically, and the two daughters are kind of spoiled and kind of selfish, and they want to make sure that Fanny knows that she's not their equal. And there's Lady Bertram, who is so passive and who has so little energy that she basically has no control over her household, and it's taken over completely by her sister, Mrs. Norris. So this is half of the book, and then there's not quite half, more than half I should say. And then there's this other part of the book where Fanny goes back to her real family, her real siblings and her real parents, and they are very, very poor, at least compared to the Bertrams. And once again, we see a family where the parents have, in some sort of way, abdicated raising their children, because Mrs. Price is a bit like her sister Lady Bertram. She's not the one who has the most energy, so she has difficulty keeping control over her household. So we have also the lovely sibling relationship between Fanny Price and her older brother William, and we also, after I say older brother, it's the oldest boy. I don't know if he's older than her. But anyway, we see that lovely relationship between Fanny and William, even though it's just by letters, and even though we see William just a couple of times in the book. It's a lovely relation. And we also see Fanny taking under her wing her little sister Susan, who did not have the luck to go to Mansfield Park and has had to survive, I guess, in this very chaotic environment at Portsmouth. So it's very interesting family dynamics going on in there that are at play. On one side, the very rich family where nothing goes as it's supposed to go, and nothing goes the way it's supposed to go. And the very poor family where things are going just as bad, but apparently it's not that important, because when you're poor, nothing is. I don't know exactly, but we can see the parallels between these parents who have more or less lost control of their household, of their children. Of course, Sir Thomas Bertram has not lost control, but he's absent for a good part of the book. So his absence is felt, and the way it is felt is that the family basically loses its moral compass. Now, of course, losing your moral compass in Jane Austen is not quite the same as in a modern novel. There are no drugs involved, no prostitution, and no suicide, so it's not that bad. Basically, they are just trying to have fun and to mount a play. So it's not... I say mount, is that, can you say that in English? You can say that in French. Monter une pièce. They try to play a play. So basically, they're just having fun in a very innocent way for today, but for the days of Jane Austen, it was terrible. So basically, anyway, back to family dynamics. I thought that Mansfield Park is the place where, is the book where family dynamics are the most explored and are the most interesting. But as I said at the beginning of the book, it's not a topic on which I feel very strongly about Jane Austen's novels. If you're telling me that no, Mansfield Park is the least interesting family-wise, I don't think I would fight you very hard on it. Maybe a little bit, but maybe not as hard as if you told me that Edmund Bertram was the most dashing hero of Jane Austen's novels. So let me know in the comments what you think, and I will see you in the next video. À la prochaine!